There's so many people here I need to give a shout out to. I'm going to miss somebody for sure, but I'm Robert Mounts, the current president of the Matheson board. We have several board members here today. I see in the back. Would you please stand if you're a member of the Matheson board? All right. And our featured speaker has been on our board for the last 3 years. We're particularly honored to have her. We have E. Stanley Richardson, who's not here today, at least not yet, the Alachua County Poet Laureate. We also have Commissioner Desmond Duncan Walker on our board. It's a very diverse, very good, very motivated board, and we're happy that you're all here today. This has been quite a month, for leading up to Juneteenth. I'm amazed by it. I've been at the installment ceremony for Queen Mother Monier Vivian Filer, who has been honored in this very room with the city ward. We Monday, many of you probably attended the unveiling of the Sankofa statue at the corner of the Alachua County Courthouse. And what an event that was. Hundreds of people there uh, revealing and talking about history that, frankly, growing up in Gainesville, and I'm a native, I never heard of it. Most of us did not, especially on the so-called white side of town. And there were things about Gainesville growing up when I was at PK Young, and it was lily white, no black students. And even at the University of Florida for a while, there was no black students. That just goes to show you how old I am. But it's quite a transformation in our city. We at the Matheson are proclaiming quite loudly right now that for good reasons that we believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we also believe in addressing uncomfortable periods in our history with purpose and thoughtfulness, and we respect highly the people like Lizzie and Dr. Patricia Hilliard Nunn, who have dug so deeply into some of the things in the past and the efforts, like the Newberry mayor, who has recognized that. They had the soil ceremony last year. This year is the 100th year of the Rosewood Massacre. I just realized coming here today that it's on the anniversary of my own birthday, January 5th. And so I'm learning history every day. You will too, I know. But there's a couple things I have to say that are obligatory. We have some sponsors. On the back of your program, we would like to recognize Visit Gainesville, Alachua County, the City of Gainesville, the Department of State, Division of Cultural Affairs, the Florida Council of the Arts and Culture, and the state of Florida. We also have a program sponsor today, one of our board members, Jay Norquist, and his wife, Allison, who is not here at least yet. But there's many ways to support the Matheson. That's one of the ways. And an exhibition sponsor is here today. You see the Great Southern Music Hall all around the room. That was a very expensive, very elaborate exhibit funded by Jeffrey Meldon, who is in the room in his white suit. The Matheson is a nonprofit organization. It's not part of the government. It's not part of the city or the county or the state. We depend on grants and private donations and memberships. And it doesn't cost very much to be a membership and get notified of all of our programs, get access to our bookstore at a discount, all of those kind of things. And last but not least, certainly our executive director for the last 2 years, Caitlin Hoff Mahoney at the desk. So I'm anxious to hear the real Rosewood story from Lizzie Jenkins. I went online this afternoon and looked at a YouTube video, and already she's told me, well, that's not right. That's not even the right house. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce you our board member, Lizzie Jenkins.
Will you continue? Thank you very much. I forgot. I have I do a lot. Early this morning I was at the where were I? Jamar Aviation Academy flying my plane, right? That I plan to purchase. Don't believe that. But I do plan I do plan to take lessons. I try to do more than I am capable of doing, but I enjoy it. But anyway, uh thank you very much, Mr. Robert Mount. And I do forget names too. But I have been working with the board for 3 years. Thank you. I have enjoyed it. Okay. Whenever I can attend some of the meetings because I'm just busy. But anyway, I made sure this is my entire Rosewood story. Can't see this, but I want you to know I was born on a farm. There's a little shed. I forgot. I was born on a farm in this little shack, and I have been running and fighting ever since. It's been a long, long, long journey for me in Rosewood, but I know a change is gonna come because I need you all to help me make that change. I told you I could not sing, but my mom, if she had been living, this was her favorite song. She sang at my husband and my wedding, and I want my husband to stand. John, will you please stand? My $1 million husband. I said when I turn 50, I'm going to be a millionaire. I met John. Still don't have that million. But he is my rock and my best friend. And my mom told him before she died, you better take care of my baby, and you all must keep the Rosewood story alive accurately. Okay. And so that's what I have been doing, researching, authenticating, and telling the truth. And she said, of all things, when you research, tell the truth. The people today, you all, we did not create Rosewood. It's history. History is who we are. And make sure you tell the truth and never accuse anyone for anything about Rosewood. And that I do not do. But anyway, if my mom was living, she would say this about me. Precious Lord, take my baby's hand, lead her on, and let her stand through the storm and through the night. Lead her on. And that's what I'm doing, following my mom in her footsteps. She also told me, if you're going to talk about Rosewood, you need to sing a song. I said, Mom, she finished the sentence. I know you can't sing, but I'm going to write it. And she has written the song. She dictated the song to me, and I'm going to share it with you. And once I tell the story, I hope you have some questions for me because it really tells her story. And it goes like this. It's long too, because she was just long-winded. Rosewood, Florida, Highway 24, a destroyed town. No blacks live there anymore. Where emptiness resides in the silent sacred breeze. Lives there no more, only nature's moss hung trees. Rosewood Florence was a growing community until the fighting started in 1923. No one ever thought Rosewood would go down in death. that brought on so much pain and unforgettable distress. Rosewood, Florida once was a growing community linked with chains of love and family unity. Families were linked with wholesome friendship, and each link represented a special kinship. In this productive southern town of Rosewood, here the families bonded and they understood each other's lives in their unique neighborhood. Lordy, 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 Rosewood used to be real good until this little old sleazy woman with a cheating heart triggered the Rosewood Massacre, and the colored had to depart. They ran for their lives in the middle of the night. They'd heard a man was coming to start a hideous fight. Run, 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 run on for your life. Oh Lord, hide anywhere. Just try to survive. Children followed their leaders with fear on their soul and almost froze to death because it was so cold. They were told not to move by the ones in charge, but trying to keep silent was awfully hard. Messages were sent to them by Sheriff Bob Walker. Listen out for John White, the designated talker. The Cedar Key train conductors were told to pick up in Rosewood. Standing by the tracks with the lantern, its young school teacher stood, waiting in desperation to carry out the sheriff's plans, rounding up the hidden survivors to board the midnight train. The sheriff and the store owner worked around the clock. Oh Lord, inform the train conductors just when and where to stop. Pick up the men, women, and children who were hiding out and bring them to Archer, Florida, traveling the same old route. Bob Walker and John Wright took on a daring risk. Put the survivors on the train, Lord, and sent them off with a kiss. Notified the Gainesville families to be on the lookout for their kin. Told them the train was a coming and told them exactly when. Conductors John and William Bryce headed on up the track, dropping off other survivors, not taking the time to look back, counting heads and making a list, doing what they knew they should to report to Sheriff Bob Walker back down in Rosewood. Waldo, they went through Waldo, Stark, Lord T. Maxville. The train kept chugging along. Baldwin, Callahan, K-Town, Bryceville would soon become their home. The Fanny Taylor lie had ruined their lives, and her story didn't set too well. And deep down within each survivor's heart, they knew one day they would have their story to tell about Rosewood, Florida. Once was a growing community until the fighting started in 1923. No one ever thought Rosewood would go down in death that brought on so much pain and unforgettable distress. County, county-wide shame, statewide shame, worldwide shame that brought on so much painful shame. Oh Lord, an unforgettable distress. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it, but I'm not going to sing it again. Oh my God. But anyway, my mother was something else. She was a storyteller. And Kaylin, will it be okay if I pause here and entertain questions? Okay, and you know that Kaylin is going to tell you because I just need time to breathe. I think so too. Thank you. So for so that we can make sure that everybody can hear what the question is. How old was your mother and aunt when this Rosewood Massacre happened? Perfect question. Thank you very much. My aunt was a Rosewood school teacher, married a young man from Rosewood, moved there and taught school there. She is really from Archer. When it happened, she was 28. My mother was 20, still at home, living with their parents, single with three little brothers. My aunt, okay, I have answered your question and I'll come back to you, but I think, Carly, do you have a question? Okay. I will come back to your question, okay, and answer it. No,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. How many people lived in Rosewood at the time, and how many live there now?
None live there now, and that was the question. That was the first thing I was supposed to tell you. I don't know. That's the one question out of all of my research. I cannot answer how many people live there in 1923. However, I have done research. I did locate the 1919 school records. And all the school records, and I want you to know, I need to say this so Levy County School Board can hear me. I bet I went there 3, 4, 5, 6 times begging for the records. Well, we don't have them. Oh, sure you have them. Well, we can't find them. Of course you can find them. And I have had to fight not fight, be forceful. So on about the 16th time, really wasn't that long. But anyway, well, maybe they are, in this, I don't remember, fish, whatever. They had them put away. So I was able to find the school records. And on those school records, 1919, there were 20 adults, parents, guardians to 47 children. Okay, so what I assume at that time, it was approximately, in 1919, it was approximately between 125 to 150 people living there because there were adults, okay, that worked. They were not counted on that record. It was either the mother or the father as a guardian, not both. And there were kids old enough to work and they did not attend school. Okay. So I would say not more than 50. It wasn't a whole bunch of people because in 1913, when Sumner, which is approximately 3 miles from Rosewood, not closed, opened the new sawmill, some of the Rosewood people that worked at or the Rosewood sawmill migrated or transferred or moved to Sumner and worked at the new sawmill because they were paying more. It was all about money. And I want you all to know that in Rosewood, there were shotgun houses. In Sumner, shotgun houses that the blacks lived in and the whites lived in. There were no two-story houses. And I have the supporting evidence. I have pictures of those 3 different styles. Okay. It's going to be in my real book, my history book, maybe later this year. It's just I haven't had enough time. But anyway, I hope I answered your question. Very good question. And I know Carly has a question he would like to ask.
Well, thank you for giving us lots of clear details because we've seen movies, but Hollywood makes their own images. If it may or may not be true, it's just dramatic. So, do you feel like there's been enough emphasis, or does there need to be emphasis on the connection of things like Rosewood, Ocoee, Tulsa? I mean, all the way back to 1876, and also scores of black towns under reservoirs. Do people get it that this was a wave sweeping the country for an extended time of terrorism?
Good question. Good question. I want you to know that research is being done. I know you've heard of FIU down in Miami. I love FIU. I'll tell you later why. But anyway, Dr. Mathie, who is a biochemist, anyway, she loves Rosewood. She is responsible for the elegy of Rosewood, came up here and brought two chief curators, went in my house, with my permission, of course, and cataloged all of my aunt's Rosewood artifacts, took it to FIU, put it into our exhibit that they now call the elegy, an elegy for Rosewood. Okay. Later on, I want you to ask me those questions. I'll come back and answer it. But right now, I want to go back to your question. I've forgotten it, but I know I didn't completely answer it. Yes. What was it? Okay, I gave you the age of my aunt. My mom was 20, and as I say, still living home, single. My aunt met with physical tragedy because her husband was accused of assaulting Fannie Taylor. Remember the little old woman with the sleazy heart? Okay, he was accused of assaulting her. Wasn't true. They forced him, okay, not forced, they tried to intimidate him into admitting that he assaulted Fannie Taylor. It didn't work. However, just forgive me, because when I talk about my aunt being gang raped, it just, I kind of like lose. So because he would not confess, they came back, they got my aunt, put a rope around her neck. I didn't tell you about the rope around his neck first for the first night, and forced him, or tried to force him to admit that he assaulted Fannie Taylor. He said no, 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 no. So they beat him, beat him down, and blooded him, and almost died. He thought he was going to die, and before he passed out, he said something about Sam Carter. So he was bloody. He had been beaten, but they said, well, he's damn near dead. Let's finish him off. Cheryl Walker, remember in my song I talked about Cheryl Walker? Cheryl Walker arrived just in time and said, no, don't. Throw him in my car, and I will take him in the woods and I'll finish him off. They threw him in the sheriff's car, and as fast as that little Model T could bring him to Gainesville, he came to Gainesville. He located P.J. Ramsey. Does anybody know P.J. Ramsey? Oh, yes, that was the sheriff. That was Alachua County Sheriff. He said to P.J. Ramsey, put him up, get those two black doctors, Dr. Air and Dr. What's what? Pepper. Your grandfather. Okay. See, I know who you are. Yes, and he said, get those doctors and bring them in to take care of him. They did, and you better not tell the KKK he is here. And they didn't for 6 months. Okay, Aaron lived, and we know what would have happened. Okay, the sheriff told it. So sheriff Walker, Levy County Sheriff, got in that little car, and as fast as it would bring him back to Rosewood, he went to Aunt Sarah's house because Aunt Sarah's house was like a gathering community house, and everybody met there. So that's where the women and children had gathered for safety. So what the sheriff was doing, he knew he left them in just out of control when he left. And he went back to Aunt Sarah's house because he knew, as sure as his name was Sheriff Bob Walker, that mob had gone to Aunt Sarah's house. And just as he thought they had gone back there. And before the sheriff, they heard the Model T coming to Aunt Sarah's house. They ran to the door. Before he could exit his car, they yelled, they got Gussie. Gussie was my aunt, Mahulda Gussie Brown Carrier. But in Rosewood, they called her Gussie because they could not articulate Mahulda. So he jumped in his car and he went to their hangout. Barrel fire. It was real cold. And asked, where is she? When he exited the car, he didn't see her, but he saw them laughing, talking, and drinking moonshine, having a good time. And no one said anything. And they had actually raped her because they asked her over and over, where was your husband last night? And she continued to say, at home with me in bed. And they pulled guns out to her head in an effort to intimidate her. And she got a little sassy. And the last time they asked her, where was your husband last night? And she said with them with much authority, in home with me, in bed all night long. Oh, she's an uppity bitch. Let's rape her. And she told my mom before they said it, she knew they were going to say it. And that's exactly what they did. I'm not going to talk anymore about the rape, but the sheriff, when he looked for her, he could not find her because they had dragged her back. Her nightgown was torn off, her no shoes. She told my mom she thought she had a tear in her eye, a bug in her eye. It was a wet, frozen tear. So he found her, put his jacket around her, brought her back through the crowd. And of course they said, nigger lover, put her in the car, took her back to Aunt Sarah's house. She was never clean again. She didn't know if her husband was living, had survived. He in jail didn't know if she had survived. So when she came home in 3 or 4 days, January 1, 1920, I'm sorry, January 4, and exited, disembarked at the Archer train station, my uncle, who owned the taxi service in 1923, picked her up or got her from the train and took her to her mother's house. Her mother, the school teacher's mom, was my grandmother, and the taxi driver was her brother. She went in that house. There were many women, community women, waiting to welcome her home. She went straight through the house. My mom said, got in bed and cried for days. Told my mom her story only. She was too embarrassed to tell her parents that she had been raped. And she told my mom her story in confidence at age 20. And my mom made certain I was the one to carry this story on. I heard it the first time at age 5. I'm skipping a lot because 30 years is a lot of research for me to talk about in 2 minutes. So, Mom gave me the assignment after her night of telling her 4 children the story when I was 5 in front of a fireplace. It was so cold. Everything was cold to me, but it was so cold. My brothers went to sleep. My sister wasn't interested, but I don't know why, that story attached itself to me. And Mom gave that assignment to me when I got older. And I said, Mom, I can't do it. I cannot do it. It's too much. It's too painful. She said, if Mama was younger, Mama would do it. And I sure wanted to say to her, do it. And as I said, I was angry, but I feel different now because I'm educating you, and hopefully together we can get through this. Okay. It's all about hate. It's time out for hate. You have to plan to hate. To love comes easy. automatically. So mom and me have been through our ups and downs, but she just wanted me to tell that story, keep that story alive, and that's what I am doing. Oh Lord. Oh, I'm sorry. But let me look over here at this picture again and see if I think of anything else on here. My dad, let me tell you, I don't think I have ever told anybody this story. My dad was a farmer, sharecropper. He was scared to death of white men. And when I tell you scared to death, he was. Did y'all know that all white men were KKK members? Now, the train conductor granddaughter told me this. And plus, she gave me the picture, so I have the supporting evidence. Plus, she was a super nice person. But she said to me, her conviction, she said, you know what, Mrs. Lizzie, all of them were not KKK caliber or capable of being KKK members. She said, but they were afraid not to. So they signed the oath. When you hear the word oath keeper today, that's what they are talking about. She said, Miss Lizzie, some of those members that signed that oath were more afraid of the KKK than you are. Because you know, and I know, and I got from what she said, if they didn't do what they were supposed to do, there was a repercussion. So it's not a bad thing. I got some people that's helping me and on my project. My board is very diverse. And I have some people that's helping me on there that, oh my God, they are something else supportive. Melvin Law, Jeffrey, is Jeffrey in the house? Jeffrey is my good friend. We have been on Facebook 100 times. Like 3 times I have been on his Facebook, his podcast, and he has been on my podcast once. And by the way, my podcast, Clean Lizzie podcast. So you go there and see what I'm talking about. And I just wanted to tell you, remember I told you my dad was afraid of white men. This is where we lived growing up. I was born in that house, October 25, 1938, on the kitchen table because we could not afford, well, we were not allowed in the hospital. But I did okay, didn't I? I have to make it comical so that I can continue the story. And I told you my dad was afraid of white men. Man, I have never told this story, I don't think, to anybody, not even to you, John. But one night, I don't tell it often. Uh, and let me tell you something else. And I know I'm getting ahead of my time myself, but there were a lot of Masons in Rosewood, and Aaron was a Mason. That's how the Fanny Taylor lover was able to get to Aaron's house and knock on his door and ask for help because they were Masons, but they were not friends. But they all had the very same Masonic knock. So one day, one night, this is my family down here, my dad, my mom, my 2 brothers, sister, and me. I'm the only one that's still okay. But anyway, one night, and this is remember I said all white men are, yeah. We were coming from church. We had this little truck. My dad was the driver. I was in my dad's lap. My sister was next to my dad, my brother, my mom, and then in her lap was my baby brother. Our truck broke down coming from church. We were like 5 miles from home. And I felt my dad's heart boom, boom, heard it too. I didn't know. I was too young to understand what was going on. So he was scared. And we were on the highway 27 and we saw trucks, maybe not 27. We were on a dirt road. No, we were on a highway. And cars, we could see car lights, not very many. But my dad just sat there. And then over the hill, I remember seeing this truck with lights. It was a semi, and they had the lights up there. My dad reached over in his glove compartment and got out a white handkerchief. jumped out of the car, pushed me forward, jumped out, ran to the road, and he started waving that white handkerchief. Who knows why? That's a Masonic sign. Oh, yeah, he was amazing. And the guy that was driving that semi must have been amazing too, because I could hear those wheels squealing. But he stopped just in time to pick us up. But he came over there to talk to my dad, and every word that came out of his mouth was a cuss word. What in the are you doing out here this time of night? And just called him all kinds of names. However, he was pushing us and telling my dad to put us in the truck, in his truck at the same time, so that he could take us to safety. And as I reflected growing up and meeting this girl in Brightsville, who was the granddaughter of the train conductor, now I know what she meant. They were afraid too. This truck driver didn't want anybody else to stop and see my dad or us in the truck with him. So he shoved us in this truck. You know, then they weren't making trucks as big as that. He took us home, put us out, and I know this is not Rosewood. This is racism. And then it is humanity. Okay, all at the same time. And I just thought you needed to know that everybody that we is not bad. So that's a story that I will take to my grave, that somebody saved our lives. And guess what? He put us out, but he took my dad with him. We didn't know where dad was, but my dad came back with his truck. So he took my dad to the man's house that my father sharecropped with. He didn't want to leave him out there. I mean, I got on that story, but it sounds good to me. Now let's move back to Rosewood. Is there a question? Anything else? Yes.
This whole business of the Ku Klux Klan in Alachua County has always interested me. I can remember my political science chair at the University of Florida, Manning Dower, and Gene Chalmers' husband, David, used to go out to their Klan meetings and take down license plate numbers. He told us that in class to try to figure out who in town were members of the Klan. But back in 1922-23, and by the way, Chris Matheson, who had been mayor from 1910 to 1918, had left about that time to go be a minister at the Presbyterian Church in Oklahoma. I'm convinced he was never part of it, but there were people in Gainesville who were, and the 200 or so people, white men who went to Rosewood to cause this fight, allegedly were from Gainesville, members of the Klan. And at the time, I've also read that the forerunner of the Gainesville Sun editorialized in favor of the Klan in those days. It's unimaginable. But, you know, now they have no editorial policy. But I'm wondering if those facts are true about the Klan.
What facts?
That the 200 or so men.
It said the newspaper, 1923 newspaper.
Editors.
Yes, said there were approximately 400, I think it said. They said different things, but Gene Chalmers, may I tell your story? The one where, you know, my dad, let me tell my dad's story first. My mom and dad and my story. As kids, when we went to town, what we call Little Archer to shop, I remember dad would lead the line, and his 4 children, the 4 of us, and mom would be at the back. When dad met somebody on that sidewalk, white, dad always stepped off, and we stepped off too. Okay. And the reason I said your story, because that is the story you told that I remember. And when you told me that story, I said, I lived that too. But I was not the privileged one. I was like following orders, because people back then, the KKK and the insurrectionists, What? Yeah, there was something else. You hear? And my mom, we were on our way to pay for our food. You know, back then when my black folks didn't have enough money to pay food, they would charge it. Okay, put it on a tab. So my mom went in the store to pay her account, and it had gone up over the weekend. She said to him, "You have added." She was something else. When I say she was something else, she didn't take anything. Okay. And she said, "No, it wasn't this when." Oh, yes, it was, Aretha. She said, "You're calling me a lie." My mother carried a Colt 45 in her bra, had a switchblade in her pocket. And I'm telling you what is God displeased. I heard that switchblade go click. Well, now let me see, Rita. Maybe it is what you said it is. She took care of business. I lived like that. I didn't want to live in fear. And today, I live a stressful life. I live a fearful life. I'm always defending, especially as you say, when you get out there and you have not done the Rosewood research and you want to use it to your benefit and make money on it, and you know it's not true. I have a problem with that, with people disrespecting the victim that lost their lives. So, Jane, and I'm not trying to embarrass you, but you said, what did you tell your husband?
My partner, second, and it was raining, and I recently arrived in Eastville, about over. I had an umbrella, and I was all dressed up fancy, and in that day, Negro couple was coming down the other way, and they got off the sidewalk and they stood into the gutter with that much water. And I couldn't believe it. And I came home and said to David, I cannot live here. This is just too much. And he said, well, we can either go back up north or stay and fight. I said, oh, okay. I know what I'm going to do for the next 20 years.
And that story that Jane bonded us. That's who I am. I'm a fighter. Can y'all tell? I am a fighter. Do we have any more questions? I know I'm talking about more than Rosewood. It's racism, it's history, it's everything, but hate it's what really prompted and caused Rosewood to.
Hello, my queen. Um, if I missed it, I'm sorry. I know you don't like when people mistell the story. Do you think for people the Spike Lee movie is a good introduction to the story or not?
Would you like to hear my mom's version of the movie?
Yes.
All right. I told you, I didn't tell you, but my mother was a PhD equivalent. She had an 8th grade education, 4 months a year, but she was the sharpest person I have ever. And I'm not saying that because she's my mother. She was just a genius. And it didn't rub off on me. I almost said I am too, but I'm not. But Mom, in 1994, the movie was made. They knew my mother was the sister to the Rosewood school teacher. They invited her to speak after the movie and give her overview. So she was 95, right? After the movie, they said to her, okay, Mrs. Robinson, you may come forward, you may step forward, and we would like to hear your version of what happened of Rosewood. And she did. She did an excellent job. And a question from the floor. Well, Mrs. Robinson, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate the movie? She said, well, give it a 7. And the most important things that happened, it let the world know that Rosewood happened. And it let the world know that white women lie on black men. And everybody in the movie, had something to say. She put her hand on her 95-year-old hip and she said, not only did it happen then, it still happened today. Couldn't hear a pin drop. But you asked about that. That's her version of what happened. Fannie Taylor? Did my mother talk about Fannie Taylor out of something? No. She said Fannie Taylor wasn't the only person out there messing around. She just got caught. Okay? Other people did it. Okay? She got caught. Okay, and she was having an affair with a white man, and she was ready to call it off, and he said no. A fight ensued, and she was left blue, black, bruised. It was easier for her to say, a black man attacked me. And that's what she did. And that's why Rosewood was burned to the ground, because of lies. And we need to stop it. Question? Yes. Okay, let me tell you about the book. But I want my sorors to stand first. I didn't forget you all. And my board members, I think I saw Tamika walk in. Did I see Princess come in? And my husband, my board member. Okay. And we do have food. Okay. Now, about the book. That's the most important thing. This book is not my everyday book. This book is about Rosewood, Lizzie's Rosewood race. Okay. It's only 64 pages, but it talks about my race. It talks about my farm. That's why I wanted to get something up here about my farm. Okay. And school teacher and his wife. I don't know who this handsome man is. This is see, you people are just absolutely too smart for me. My mother and her daughter, her favorite daughter. And that's me in my podcast. That's Steve Spurrier. Boy, you know what? I'm important. I have access to Steve Spurrier. Personal what? Hard room. Oh, and by the way, I interviewed him last week. So you have to listen at my podcast to see what we talked about. But anyway, the book is about my childhood race. It was difficult. It was fun. And the one part, you were going to find out that I am something else when you get to the part where you see me raising sand, because my dad's sharecropper, man, he sharecropped was not nice to him. Remember, I talked about the profanity and the cursing and the ugliness. He always belittled my father. Is some of that still in me now? Of course it is. Have I forgotten? No. Have I forgiven? A few years ago, my girlfriend told me, I said, and I would call his name. She said, Liz, you cannot live and be successful if you continue to hate that man. I hated him because of the nasty things he said to my father. And I'm not going to show you the picture until I find it. I just want to show you this. And Dad, I was a tomboy, and I would always say, Dad, I want to go with you in the field and help you work. I really didn't want to help him work. I just didn't want to wash dishes. And he would tell Mom, well, I need to take her out and let her drive the truck for me and help me. So this particular day, the boss man came out. My dad saw him coming. My dad said, okay, I want you to just lay low. Push my head down. I was like 13-ish. He didn't know I was in the truck. So he started using profanity on my dad. Oh my God. I couldn't take any more of it. He said the wrong thing, and I rose to the occasion. And everything that he had said to my dad, back at you, sir. My dad, I told you, were afraid of people. I shocked my dad. I shocked him. So when he left, my dad said, you shouldn't have said that. Wow. Dad was scared. Why was he afraid? Dad owned land. And I could hear my dad praying at night to protect his family. He didn't want to be lynched. He didn't want to live us. But like I said, I had to help him out because I didn't like that. It didn't happen anymore. Okay. Because he was very careful. And Daddy didn't take me in the field with him anymore either. But anyway, the book, you're going to find it interesting. And I have the Archer School, you're going to see that in here. And it was funded by Rosenwald. You remember Julius Rosenwald? He is the name right? Okay, he funded schools for blacks. Okay, and that's the school I went to, and you will see the flooring. They were hardwood floors, and in here a hardwood floor. But there's a very important person here in Alachua County. Give credit where credit is due. When I taught through segregation, 1970. I was working in a pod with three other teachers. It was Christmas time, and the other three teachers were white. I didn't have a room mother, and she walked up to me one day leading up to Christmas because, the parents, the homeroom parents, always prepared the parties. She said, Miss Robinson, I was Robinson, Miss Robinson, would you like for me to ask my mom to be your homeroom mother? I said, sure. Sure enough, she went home. The next morning, she came to school with her mother. And her mother said to me, hi, Mrs. Robinson. And she told me, I am Mrs. Godfrey. And my daughter said that you needed a homeroom mother. I said, I sure do. She said, well, I would love to be your homeroom mother. Do y'all know who the little girl I'm talking about? Godfrey. Godfrey. Do you know Karen Godfrey Clark, former superintendent? That was my lifesaver. She impacted my life. And when people talk about people, I really don't care. Whatever I have heard about her, it doesn't change my love for her and my respect. Because with that one movement, the entire class, I couldn't walk to lunch holding her hands any longer because everybody else wanted to hold my hand. So she made a difference in my life. And that's who she is to me today. I wish she could have been here. Yeah, is Janice here? Janice Owens, was she able to come? Okay. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this book. I will like this book. And it has lots of black children faces. When I was growing up, not one book had a black picture of anybody black. When we got the books, they were scratched up, marked up, profane words, profanity, and all of that. In spite of that, we still learn to read. But I hope you enjoy this book. And if you do, if you want to purchase a copy for anybody, they are on my website, rosewoodflorida.com. And enjoy. You're going to read about my life. Is there another question? Any question? I have some here, and I'm going to leave some here. They are $19.99. We're asking like $2 extra for tax. Although taxes are not $2 on $19.99, but just donate that to the foundation. Ain't no shame in my game. Oh, yes, indeed. Yes. Will you hold the one up with the little guy? Okay. See, that's why I pay him well. This is my friend Greg Young. This is my nephew. Now, I have been talking Rosewood forever. So back in 1994-ish, I went to schools everywhere. I started in Levy County where the Rosewood Massacre happened. And I talked with students. And I asked them, I said, had you been living in 1923, how would you have prevented the Rosewood Massacre? Stories, wouldn't believe it. When you read, if you buy this and read it, you're going to see some parents' involvement that help them write these responses to that question. Very intelligent, not one kid ever, okay, showed any kind of hatred in their response. Awesome. And this book I wrote in 2007. It's the Alachua County, Florida, which is the history of Blacks in Alachua County. There is so much Black history in Alachua County, and I had to travel all over Alachua County. And when I tell you beg, I had to beg people for their history. We ain't giving our history away. Why are you sitting here? Just to look at it. But they would not, some people would not share, but some people did share. And it tells a fraction of Alachua County history. Now, this is not the only book that I have written. Let me show you all something else. I'm not trying, I'm just showing them. My first book was 1984 during the summer, but I didn't have anything else to do. There's the mark. What is it? Night. 1984. This is the book. It's about, you see that I have it, don't you? I'm getting there. It's about, it says a tribute to Archer Seniors, past and present. 76 families. Will you open it for me, Robert? Open it and let them see. The family trees. I had a Peck typewriter in 1984, and I hand crank, what? Yes, that too. And recently I kind of like updated it, but the history of Archer is here. Okay. Let me show you all my first book that I was embarrassed to print, but I couldn't afford it. I self-published it. Okay. This is my heart. I could not afford it, so I used a little bit of money. But the story of Rosewood is in this book. And there's a map on the back. So I've been in this business a long time, not trying to make money, but trying to keep history alive. One day I wasn't doing anything, and a young lady came to me by the name of Clara Parker and said, let's do the Black history of the Black females in Alachua County. I have not shared this with anybody, but I do have it. And if you all are interested, maybe I will be able to share, make some copies, but everything I have done has been whatever. That's enough for right now. Just want you all to know that I am a historian and I do try to do things for the community. I want each child in here to be able to write their own story because each child has a story. I was hoping some children would be here, but anyway, I'm going to run them down because I have a job for them. Okay.
All right.
Everybody give Miss Lizzie a hand. And please stick around for a while for book signing, for looking at some of these books, having some good food, conversation with each other. If you like what you're seeing at the Matheson, please join us, become a member, and thank you so much for coming.